Today is a historic day, known as the Opinion Poll Day, where on this very day the people of Goa voted and the results, when was out, it chose to remain as it is. The same status, what do you call it? They called it that Union Territory, and voted against certain forces, certain political groups who wanted Goa to be merged with Maharashtra. And we must not forget at that point of time, Maharashtra was ruled by the Congress. And great leaders like VP Naik, YP Chavan, they all lobbied in such a way that Goa should be brought into Maharashtra. Now, before this could start, we must understand that Goa was liberated in 61. And after that, I think in 63, when the first election took place, for reasons, I was a young kid at that point of time, 16 years old, but I was keenly watching situations. I had an interest then. At the first elections, where the Maharashtrawadi Gomantak Party, the United Goans led by Dr. Jack Sigera, Maharashtrawadi Gomantak Party led by Dayanand Bandurkar, but who did not contest. This is very important. Dayanand Bandurkar did not contest the first election because maybe he thought he would never able to win. And then there was a Congress with great stalwarts, great leaders put as candidates. At that point of time, our Goans showed wisdom and routed the Congress out, absolutely, and said, no, we will vote only for our leaders. Now, whether that has benefited, not benefited, we'll see it later on, where we have reached, to what stage. And in that election, for some reason, I cannot understand it, but it so became that United Goan was Dr. Jack Sigera and Maharashtra Nadi Gomantak Party was Dayanand Bandurkar. Somehow polarization took place. And United Goans looked like a Catholic party and the Maharashtra looked like the majority party. And when Maharashtra Gomantak Party got a majority, it was then they decided that Dayanand Bandurkar should be the first chief minister. And therefore, they had to have a by-election. And he got elected through a by-election. As he became the chief minister of Goa, he became popular to the neighboring state, which was automatic, became more closer to Maharashtra than to Karnataka. And those top leaders of the Congress tried to convince him that Goa should come into Maharashtra. And for some reason, because he had a majority on the floor of the House, he wanted to pass a resolution in the House to merge Goa with Maharashtra, which Dr. Jack Sigera and company strongly opposed it. Now, by opposing it, at that point of time, it was Indira Gandhi who was the Prime Minister of this country. Now, here is where Dr. Jack Sigera comes into the focus. He opposed it. All his MLAs stood by him and they strongly opposed it. And at that time, the Congress leader in Goa was none other than the late Purushottam Kakodkar. Now, Purushottam Kakodkar had a very close relationship with the Gandhi family, that's Indira Gandhi. And they all sat and decided to approach Indira Gandhi and oppose this move. And it was due to the connections of late Purushottam Kakodkar, that late Dr. Jack Sikera could make his entry and forcefully, both of them could convince Indira Gandhi that just because you have got a majority on the floor of the House, this was never an issue at the election, and therefore a separate referendum should take place. It was not a joke. She thought over it, and for some reason, since she took over from her father after a gap of some years, her father had a soft corner for Goa, and he had maintained that Goa's identity will be maintained. And I'm sure that played on her mind. And for the first time in the country, a referendum or an opinion poll was declared to say, let the people of the state decide, of that territory decide whether they want to merge or not. Now there comes the fun. I was a young boy. At the campaign time, I did not understand much. But even that campaign, the symbols were two leaves on one side and the flower on the other side. And I vividly remember how the mergerist would make slogans saying that don't pana tumka teen pana kottele, therefore vote for the fool. And the people who are fighting against the merger, that is the two leaves people, would say, full tumka gul kottele, don't pana mara and goya samara. On the counting day, let me cut it short. On the counting day, I still remember that the counting took place at Ministry Braganza Hall, and there was not a place on the streets, on the footpaths of Panjim that you could walk. It was fully crowded. And as the results were coming out from the north, the mergerist party or the full was leading. And for some reason, I was getting depressed, though I did not know the consequences of it at that point of time. I was at the age of 16, 17. And as we came past Walpoik, past Perne, past Mapsa, the food was everywhere leading. These was the places where the mergerist or the Maharashtrawadi Gomantak party already had their MLAs in getting elected from these places. And these places were also looked upon as belonging to the majority community. But after crossing Panjim, entering into Kortali, Agasai, crossing the bridge, slowly the votes started getting reduced. And once it entered Salsed, it overcame this lead that the mergerists got up to Kortali. And then I think it's about something like 40,000 votes. It was declared that the mergerists have lost. It was a very exciting day. We must not forget that this anti-merger would have never been won if the majority community, a large chunk of them, had not voted against the merger. Secondly, we must also not forget that the banner which kept the flag flying high to avoid merger were our theatrists, who kept on banging it on their stages that that this is our Goa and we have to save it. And of them, I vividly as a young kid remember the famous trio characters of Nelson, Antony, and Conception. Of course, name the theatrists of those days, maybe C. Alvarez, Ophelia, Bob Peter, all would sing for saving Goa from merging into Maharashtra. Now the question is, what is the significance of the opinion poll day? First of all, the significance of the opinion poll day is that it was first time in the history of this country that such a referendum was held. And was held to safeguard and give the option to us Goans to decide about your future. But after the opinion poll was decided, I think our leaders were lax. A lot of things could have been done to further safeguard. Now, the idea of we should rule ourselves. And let me make one mention here, which is very significant. And it is a confirmed situation. And I have heard it from top personalities who are very close to them, Chief Minister, the industrialist so-called, who are close to the Chief Minister Bandodkar, who convinced him to go slow on the merger. And they convinced him on which point? On a point that if Goa had to merge with Maharashtra, that he would never be the Chief Minister of Goa. And that opened his eyes and he went slow. So he's also played a very subtle role to allow the mergers to lose. This is very significant and it is a fact. Well, when he realized that he would not be the Chief Minister, he felt that going into Maharashtra would not help. You might have been an MLA or something of that sort. So, when this happened, we must understand that this helped. Now, the origin of this is what? We should rule. Now, Goans were ruled by the Portuguese, a very strict administration. Crime rate was very low. What has happened today? We have ruled and we have ruined. The level of corruption that has reached today, I don't think was visualized by our elders who worked hard to keep Goa as a separate identity. But definitely the leaders that followed, who claim big things, do not do what could have been done to preserve Goa's real identity. Today, getting statehood, what has happened? Yes, let us see the negative parts of it. If Goa was a part of Maharashtra, I think Goa would be something like Malwan, Ratnagiri, etc. They have also got beautiful beaches. Now, would that have helped us? Would have our land remained with us? Today, the rate along the coastal in Malwan, Ratnagiri, that side, would have also got beautiful beaches, stretches and stretches of that rate on that coastal area and Goa's coastal area cannot be even imagined. I'm afraid to say it is 10 times more in Goa. No, it will be much more. So finally, there are plus and minus points. But who are responsible is our Goans who have become so greedy that they are prepared to trample upon their own brothers and sisters to become rich. And they have realized, many of them are still realizing that finally you have to go with your empty hands. All your riches and everything will remain here. But what you have done, the curses of Goans are still continuing. Because today a Goan cannot afford to buy a house, or cannot afford to buy a land of 300 square meters. So what has happened finally? Let us not blame the status of statehood or the opinion poll or anything else. Let us blame ourselves. It is we, our Goan leaders, till today are betraying us, and they have continued to betray us. We are now we are going to face an election. Let us pray and decide a proper party. Let's not get emotional and let's not get egoistic and try to say that this fellow is bad and this fellow is good. Put your hands in your conscience before you go to the polling booth. Thank you.